Hello friends, how are you? Bonjour, Lajami, Kamasawa, Adab, Salam, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Namaskar. कैसे हैं आप लोग? As you all know, in Canada, recently we have seen a big surge in housing prices. Especially after the COVID, when most of the forecast was coming and indicating for a decline in housing prices because of the COVID-19. All forecasts went wrong, and home prices have gone up a lot. For example, in market like Toronto and Vancouver, average house price exceeded well over $1 million. And in the smaller cities where the housing prices were not very high to begin with, like Ottawa, also seen a very rapid increase in prices, and on average, the price in Ottawa is now about $750,000 for an average house. In this video, I explain to you that what is the possibility for sustainability of these prices. So the fear which is developing among the policymakers is that these price gains are not sustainable, and there is a price bubble is forming in Canada which can burst. So I explain you first what is a price bubble in the housing market, and then I'll explain you what are the indicators of a bubble, and then I'll explain you a possible policy options available to policymakers who can control the burst of this bubble. Housing price bubble starts when demand exceeds supply of housing. There are many factors that contribute to the rise in housing demand. That includes lower interest rates, which results in lower mortgage rates or lower mortgage payments, or less supply because of non-availability of construction workers, or also possibility is that if there is investment, many investors can enter into the housing market to make some quick bucks in their some profit. So that's another possibility. And also geopolitical situation outside the country, where if there's a political unrest in some other countries, the people of those countries prefer to come and invest in a stable country. So there are a number of factors that could cause an increase in housing demand. However, the increase in demand leads to increase in price. And then when the price continues to grow over a certain period, maybe a year or two, then ordinary home buyers, they start thinking that, oh, maybe this increase in price is a continuous phenomena, so the price of homes will continue to grow. So there is a speculation. And with that speculation, coupled with the lower supply of housing, there is more and more demand. So the people who don't even want to buy a house today and they want to buy a house tomorrow, they also enter into the market and say, oh, okay, because the prices are rising, so we don't know what would happen tomorrow. So why not just buy today, lock in your mortgage rate for the next 5 years at a very, very low interest rates. So that is a phenomena where there is a bubble, and sooner or later, because we know in economics that if there's a high demand, eventually there will be high supply because of the profit motives. So resources will be shifted towards housing investments. So prices will settle down. But then when the prices settle down, and we also know that interest rates are never low for the rest of the life. So interest rates have to increase at one point. So at one point, when the interest rates are going to increase and supply also increases, house prices either stabilize, or if there is a decline in demand, there is a burst in bubble. So there are 5 indicators of a housing bubble. First indicator is if the home prices are increasing faster than the growth in salaries, then there is a possibility that when interest rates go up, people who have bought at the margin their homes would not be able to pay mortgage at a higher interest rate, and they might have to declare a bankruptcy. Okay, second thing is that indicator is we have to see that what are the how many listings are coming into the market. So if used housing sales is relative to the used housing listings is growing, it means that there's more demand for used houses, and less people are going to list their house for sale. So that ratio is increasing, and if that ratio is increasing continuously, we would say this is an indicator for a housing bubble. The third thing is that if there are many investors in the housing market, so then we would see a number of completely new housings which are not occupied by people. So if there is the ratio of newly completed housing relative to the new houses are being constructed, which are new building permits, if that ratio is increasing, means there are more houses are being built but are not occupied by the people. So those are empty houses, and the empty houses mean there will be, in the future, there will be more supply coming. So there will be a decline in prices possible. And the third one is that there is a growth in price of housing, but that growth is geographically dispersed. If the price of the housing is only concentrated in a couple of cities, we can say, okay, because of high immigration or because of other factors, that a couple of cities are experiencing an increase in the prices. And if the price is higher in some cities, people can move to the suburb and buy a cheaper house outside the city. But if the prices are going to have same trend, same increase all over the country, even in the suburbs, in the small town, then it means that there is a speculation that is being widespread. And then this is an indicator of housing price bubble. Okay, one more factor that indicates a possibility of a housing price bubble is if the growth in housing demand is faster than the growth in adult population, then this means that the supply is going to be higher, and then at one point there will be a drop in demand. Why? Because the age group between 25 to 35 to 40 is the prime age group who normally demand housing. So if the growth in that segment of the population is less than the housing that are being built in the country, and especially if that been built is not being occupied by those people, that will be unoccupied units. So eventually this will be an indication that supply is exceeding the demand. So that would reduce the price in the future, and that would be a trigger effect to have a burst in the housing price. And finally, this is a very important factor to determine housing bubble is we have to calculate what is the mortgage payment of a house. So mortgage payment of the house including the property tax. If that payment is higher than the possible rent of that house, we say that there is speculation and the price is higher because of the speculation, because people can rent the house at a lower price compared to buying the house. And eventually, if more people can rent, so the prices of the houses for the houses will go down. So that's another factor. I think all the indicators at this point are pointing towards a housing bubble in Canada. So we need to know how can we sustain these prices. So it's only be sustained if we try to avoid vulnerable people from the housing market and keep people who are financially strong into the housing market. I suggest three policy prescriptions. The first one is about the financial stability of the first-time house buyers. So in Canada, first-time buyers, for the principal residence, they are going to buy for the house there where they are going to live there for the next few years. Those people can buy a house at only 5% down payment, and 95% can be financed by the bank. This 5% contribution ratio should increase to 10%. Or if this is not possible, at least the stress test needs to be redefined, and the new buyers should be assessed at a higher mortgage rate, so that if there is an increase of 1% in mortgage rate, those people should be able to afford it. Second thing about the investors in the housing market, we need to make sure at this time investors, when they buy a house in Canada, they have to contribute 20% down payment, and the 80% is financed by the banks. This ratio needs to increase to 35%. So investors needs to pay at least 35% to buy a house in Canada. That's how we can keep investors out from this housing market for the time being. And number three is about the foreign demand that we have seen in Canada. Although some cities in Canada have already introduced a taxes on foreign investment on housing, like in Vancouver and Toronto, but there are many cities where there is no discrimination between a foreign demand or a domestic demand. So foreign investors, when they invest in Canada to buy a house, they need to be taxed at least 10 to 15%. So we want to curb the foreign demand at this time. These are the special measures we should take to stabilize the housing market. And when the things are settled down, prices are stabilized, we can always relax these conditions. So hope you like the video. Please provide me your comments, your suggestions. How do you think about my policy suggestions? And we'll go from there. So till then, have a good day, and bye-bye from Ottawa.